Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your lovely welcome. It's good to be back here again. I was here yesterday. It's great. Now, as you probably know, I was UKIP's education spokesman for a couple of years. I'm not anymore, but I was also a teacher for 20 years before I got actively involved in politics. And we have the best manifesto in British politics, don't we? It's great. And the small pamphlet, Policies for the People, is wonderful, and it's got self-contained bullet points which make perfect common sense on all the areas of national life, and education's no exception to that, and I wrote that section of the manifesto, which is why I'm saying that. I'm just bigging myself up a little bit there. You know. Anyway, what you may not know is that as well as that small pamphlet, Policies for the People, there is a larger document which has a lot more comprehensive information about the different policy areas. And the section on education is about 8 or 10 pages long. I wrote that as well. And so the longer education section was predicated on 4 principles which have evolved over the time that the party's been in existence as we've been developing policy. And those principles are: good teachers are paramount to a good education. No child should be held back. The UK should be self-sufficient in skills. Yeah. Makes sense, doesn't it? And parents are the primary educators of their children. Now, who could disagree with those principles for building the foundation for an education policy? They seem to be self-evident common sense, but it seems that most other parties in the political realm in the UK don't seem to agree with that and are doing the exact opposite of those things. Let's take, for example, that we should be self-sufficient in skills. To make our country that works for our young people so that when they come out from education, they know and they have the skills to survive and thrive in this country according to their talents, their interests, their aptitudes, and their abilities. That would make simple common sense, wouldn't it? But that's not what's been happening in this country over 20 years or more. Instead of training up our own young people to be skilled in all the different diversity of jobs that we have been de-skilling, and we've been bringing in migrants from overseas to fill completely artificial skills gaps, which should provide jobs and opportunities for our own young people because we haven't been training them up ourselves. Now, I don't blame migrants from coming to fill those skills gaps. If I were a Polish plumber, I would have come here myself and made lots and lots of money. I mean, great, I love the Polish plumbers, but we shouldn't have a need for Polish plumbers. There should never have been a need, because we should have always ensured that we train enough British young people to be plumbers, shouldn't we? And one of the worst things that happened is the fake Conservative Party under John Major abolished the polytechnics. And that was a ridiculous idea, and he turned them into new universities. So we have all these great ex-great institutions that used to teach school leavers how to do skilled jobs like become plumbers and electricians and gas fitters and engineers, and now a lot of them are teaching them subjects like women's studies, where you can learn what's wrong with men, and they're learning gender studies, where you can learn that we all exist in a 3-dimensional gender fluid matrix, and you can change your gender out of 100 different options every day when you get up in the morning. And you can do decolonial studies to learn why Britain is bad. And you can do race studies to learn why white people are bad, and how to smash the patriarchy and smash the West and all this kind of nonsense. And students who go and do these kind of subjects, they come out worse off and more stupid at the age of 21 than when they went in at the age of 18. And Okay. It's utterly ridiculous. And add to that, what Tony Blair did afterwards is created a completely artificial target that 50% of school leavers should go to university. So you've got more and more students going to do these kind of ridiculous subjects, but not doing the things that they need to survive and thrive and get on in their own country. I mean, a lot of people would be far better off leaving school at the age of 16 and going and getting an entry-level job, making coffee or stacking shelves and doing that for 5 years, because then they'd have had 5 years of employment experience when they're age 21, and they'd have a little bit of money rather than having their head filled with progressive nonsense and a £50,000 debt. Wouldn't they? So we need to reverse those very, very bad decisions that have been made over successive governments in the last 25 years. We need to get back to common sense. The number of students going to university to do academic subjects needs to be cut in half. Something like that. No one else will say that, because there's no point in going to university to do an academic subject if you don't have an academic aptitude. It's really good to have an academic stream for those who benefit from it. But let's not try to force everyone into the academic stream. We need to rebuild the technical stream at universities and also in schools as well. So when it comes to secondary schools, we've long had a policy that we support grammar schools in every area. So grammar schools are the best kind of schools for people, young children from 11 to 16 or 18 who have an academic aptitude. And there was more social mobility in the 50s and 60s when we had over 1,000 grammar schools than today when we've only got 163. And the Labour Party wants to get rid of them all completely, even though a lot of them have been to grammar schools and send their own kids to grammar schools. So the hypocrisy is unbelievable. And the Labour Party also now wants to get rid of private schools, or so they say, even though some of the top bigwigs in the Labour Party sent their own kids to a private school, and Diane Abbott sent her kids to a private school as well, and now they've gone through, they want to get rid of them. Well, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Private schools are fantastic, I support them. Grammar schools are fantastic, I support them. There should be more of them in every area, but there should also be a whole range of schools for children with different aptitudes and interests and abilities. So we should have grammar schools, technical schools, vocational schools, specialist schools for children who have aptitudes and interest in music and art and drama, special schools for children who have special needs that can't cope in the mainstream, where they get the attention that they need and deserve, and faith schools as well. I think that's a very, very important part of the mix, and I'm very proud to stand up for faith schools. 97% of the schools that are faith schools in this country are Christian schools, and they've been doing a great job for 14 centuries or more as they've evolved. So I really think that they need to be supported. So let's have a range of different schools for different children so everyone can thrive. This is true diversity, not the kind of fake progressive diversity that only considers what you look like and what you do with your bits. We need true diversity for different talents, ideas, opinions and aptitudes, and then we will thrive, because we have a wonderful opportunity that Brexit is coming up, provided they don't mess it up for a third time. We'll have Brexit, and then we will be able to trade with all the nations of the world. We'll have our sovereignty back. We won't have to continue down this progressive nightmare that all the other parties are taking us down, and we can make our own laws for our own countries which do the best for our own young people. And one of the things that we also represent and advocate for as a party is freedom of speech. And we had, I did a talk on that yesterday, but freedom of speech is very much under attack in our universities, with visiting speakers being no-platformed. I haven't been no-platformed myself, but I went to speak at a couple of universities and I have to sign this little document that says I'm not going to say anything which is going to be offensive to anyone. I got round of that just by not signing it. And I wasn't invited back. But we've had so many people who are very, very interesting and wonderful thinkers that have been no-platformed in this country. This year, Cambridge University no-platformed Jordan Peterson. You would think all students would be interested to hear in what Jordan Peterson has to say, because he's a great thinker, and I think he's very, very sensible, and he says a lot of really good things that need to be said that really build up young people and actually give them something that has been missing from the kind of progressive cultural Marxist nonsense that they get from all the other channels. They need to hear someone like Jordan Peterson. Why is our best university no-platforming him? It's absolutely ridiculous. And there was another story. Just this year, students tried to get Camille Paglia, who's a well-known feminist, fired from being on the faculty at the University of the Arts in London. Now, I don't agree with everything that she says, but I certainly agree with her on the whole transgender nonsense issue, because she says there's men and women. And if you're a woman, you're a woman. And if you're a big hairy man, you can't become a woman. And you shouldn't have to call men women if you don't want to. If a man wants to identify as a woman, great, he can identify as a woman. But I should not be forced to speak something which is completely unreal and be forced to say, to be into unreality in an Orwellian sense if I don't agree with it. So a group of students suggested that Camille Paglia should be fired because she had this opinion, and should be replaced with a queer person of colour. Now, fortunately, the faculty, the university didn't agree with the students, and actually she's still there. So that's a good thing. But on the same kind of theme, one of the biggest issues this year, which has been brewing for a long time, is happening in schools and is going to particularly affect primary schools. And that's the introduction of relationships and sex education in all schools across the country. And second to Brexit, I think this is the issue that is causing most concern to the most people all across the country. And the metropolitan liberal bubble, which is pushing this stuff and thinks that it's all wonderful for forcing children to have to learn LGBT inclusive relationships education, is completely out of touch with the majority of people outside their bubble who are really, really concerned about it, and think that it's wrong to force 6-year-olds, 5-year-olds to learn about homosexuality and transgenderism. And I agree with those parents, it is wrong. But all the parties of the left are pushing this. The fake Conservative Party is the one that actually introduced the legislation in the first place and pushed the guidelines. There's been a little bit of a rowback on the guidelines because of pressure and campaigning, and what they now say is that primary schools don't have to teach LGBT if they don't want to, but it's at the discretion of the head teacher, and if the head teacher wants to teach that in a school, the parents will not be allowed to remove their children from lessons. So if a head teacher wants to give 5 or 6 year olds My Princess Boy as a reading book which has all kinds of nice pictures of boys dressing up as girls and encouraging them to do that, and if they want to give children books like Mama, Mummy and Me and King and King, which talk about homosexual relationships and confuse in some way normal male friendship with homosexual relationships, and that's very confusing to children. If a school wants to do that, parents will not be allowed to take their children out. They'll be forced to have those kind of books given to them and learn about it. And this is what the Conservative Party have been pushing. So all the other parties are either completely for that or they're silent. We're the only party which is for Brexit and is for establishing materials and a curriculum in our school which is not going to be confusing to children, and to stand up for the rights of parents as the primary educators of their children. See, this country really needs a party that is socially conservative, and I've always thought that this is the direction that UKIP should go into. There's a huge gap in the political market for such a party that's for Brexit and is for social conservatism and is for those things. And with our other excellent policies on education, which will establish excellence as a criteria for our schools rather than radical equality, which tears everything down so people become equally poor and stupid, we need to establish those as principles for our education system so that we can make it great again, and so that we can have an education system that makes and helps our young people to thrive in the post-Brexit world, where we will have so much opportunity coming our way. Now, just finally, to show that and to illustrate that, our education system clearly is not working on the international comparison tables where they use PISA, the PISA tables for comparing international levels of science, maths, and reading. The number one country internationally for science, maths, and reading is Singapore. It's number one in all of those three areas. Why is the UK not number one? We're the country that's done more than any other to develop the modern education system over centuries and centuries. You'd think that as so much has been developed in this country and spread abroad, we should be number one, but we're not. In science, we're number 15. In reading, we're number 22. And in maths, we're number 27. We are behind Slovenia, Estonia, and Vietnam. This is what Blair and Brown and Cameron and May and all their minions have done to our young people. Well, let's turn it around. Let's sweep away their progressive nonsense and establish excellence once again, so that we can be an excellent nation that we have the potential to be. Thank you very much. Thank you.